Careful! These three practices may block your English speaking, and I will explain each one of them and what you should be doing instead. If you don't know me very well, I am Teacher Prix, and here on my channel, I help students who want to advance and speak English fluently to anyone, anywhere, anytime. So stay with me until the end. Now, guys, the first one, which is the popular combo to listen and read to improve your English speaking. Many students who study alone, because they don't have the clarity of what to do, end up reading and listening. So they have the material, maybe they have a PDF file, or they use a video, or they use TED Talk or Reels and TikTok to work on their English. And they assume that because they are reading and repeating, they are practicing their English speaking. And that is not true. If you keep doing this practice, thinking you're going to improve your English speaking, that is not going to work out. Subtitles can be quite useful. I love using subtitles, and maybe right now you're activating the subtitles for this video. But when you use subtitles to study English, when you're watching movies and TV shows and videos in English, you need to understand the purpose of those subtitles and why you're using subtitles in the first place. First, we need to think about comprehension, and that is a very different topic. I'm going to focus on speaking in this video, but many students fail to improve their listening comprehension because of their addiction to subtitles. They end up listening and reading and not working on listening comprehension. Now, for speaking, you're not working on your English speaking, and I will explain why. Fluent people create. That is the main explanation. What happens when you are reading? Let me see here. This is a lesson I was studying. When I am reading, I'm just looking at the words, looking at the phrases, and listening to the audio file and repeating, going after, the speaker and repeating, reading along. And in this case, I'm not using my grammar, I'm not using my vocabulary to create sentences. And don't be fooled, you will not memorize everything you're reading. That's not how learning works. So what happens? You don't create your own sentences. And when it's time to speak, you have more pressure. And what happens when you are face to face with someone? You will have to use the grammar you study, the vocabulary you study, and put the words together. That's speaking. That's why I say fluent people create. Maybe you can't read this, but this is some feedback from a student of mine. I think now I speak more English. I speak English more confidently than before I started my journey inside the academy. Why is this happening to her? She made this comment on my platform, and I wanted to bring this here because one thing that I do with my students in my program is to make them speak. In every module, they have to record themselves speaking. And reading will not be part of your speaking exercise, of your speaking practice, because speaking will be the result of your vocabulary and grammar. So you can continue with your reading and listening exercise, but that's not going to help you talk, okay? You should be working in a better way, more strategically on your vocabulary and grammar while adding speaking exercises in the routine. And I have many videos here on my channel where you can check that out. Moving on to the next point. The I just need to speak mentality, and I will explain because this is connected to some practices we see people following nowadays, especially because with the internet, with the advance of technology, we have so many resources. And nowadays, you can find many websites, apps, platforms where you can find speaking sessions for $5, $30, $10. They're very affordable. However, you don't follow a proper method when you hire those speaking sessions. And one thing that I have seen, because guys, I have been working with so many people who used many of those websites where you can hire a tutor, a teacher for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes to work on your English speaking. And I am not, excuse me, I'm not criticizing the teachers, okay? I'm not blaming a teacher for not doing a proper job. That is not my intention with this explanation. I am criticizing the strategy behind this, okay? Which is the mass sale of speaking sessions that will not take you anywhere. Okay, and what is the problem here? Speaking is the result of combined effort. So in a speaking session, I need to understand what my students' needs are so that I can come up with a lesson, a session that will target my students' needs. And it's not simply speaking that will make you speak more proficiently in a more advanced manner. I need to combine your reading exercises, listening, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, while you're thinking of a topic that is current, that will make you feel more engaged, that will challenge you, that will bring you the necessary vocabulary and the necessary preparation. And preparing a lesson like this will take much more time. With my students, for example, I have my academy, which is my online program. I have my study plan, but I also have my private one-on-one customers. And when I am preparing a lesson, when I am preparing a session for my private students, it takes me 45 minutes to an hour to prepare a lesson, a speaking session for my students. So when you use this strategy and you think, oh, I'm already an intermediate speaker, all I need is to, go to these websites where I find speaking sessions for $10, $5, and I'll just speak and that's it. You're lacking method. And if you continue with this practice, you will go around in circles and you will start to have that belief that your English doesn't improve no matter how much you talk. And nowadays, people are so worried about quantity. Well, but if I have speaking sessions every day, then I'm going to get better. So if I talk to someone online every day, I hire those 20-minute calls and I'm going to talk. That's how I'm going to improve. So if that worked, how come people who live in the United States, people who live in Canada, people who live in Australia are not improving? It's not about the quantity of lessons you have, it's about the quality. The package I sell the most is 1 lesson per week, 4 sessions a month. And my students have results in 2 to 3 months after dedicated work, methodology, someone with a vision, with a plan that understands what your needs are. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't use this. I'm just saying be careful because these sessions, they could do more harm than good. And this is the problem with technology nowadays. You have thousands of options available, but they may not necessarily help you master your English speaking and boost your confidence so that you can speak to people at work, when traveling, in meetings, job interviews. I was just talking to a friend of mine, and she told me that her friend who speaks English failed a job interview. And why? She had this belief that she was already good, that she didn't need to study so much anymore, that she just needed, some speaking sessions. And then she faced a job interview in English, and the feedback was that her English speaking was not on point. But she was taking speaking sessions. She was having these casual conversations that she could purchase online. So why didn't they work for her? Because it's about strategy. So it's not about doing more. It's about doing what is right for you with a strategy, with a plan. Before I move on, another important point that you need to understand is, connected to number 2, to the second practice, is your fluency will depend on your integrated practice. As I was mentioning before, when I am preparing the lessons for my students, even in my academy, that follows the same strategy. It may not be a private session, but I follow the same style when creating lessons for my students in my program. If you want to level up your English speaking, I need to think about how the listening exercises will help you. I need to think of how the vocabulary is going to help you, how the grammar will help you, and combine all the activities with one goal in mind: make you speak. Of course, that I also need you to understand native speakers, use more advanced vocabulary, but at the end of the day, you want to be fluent. And a speaking session without a clear goal and supporting skills will do very little to your fluency. That's what I wanted to highlight with the second practice that so many people follow nowadays. Now, tip number 3 would be, before I share number 3, make sure to share this video with a friend. Perhaps there's someone you know who would definitely benefit from watching this lesson. And if you're interested, I have my study plan that helps you follow this integrated practice style to help you understand how to study more efficiently, even if you are alone. Okay, so check out the link in the description of this video. But let's move on. Number 3. We listen and we don't judge. First and foremost, if you're watching this, we can agree to disagree, okay? We don't need to see eye to eye on everything. There are some topics here on the internet that people become very sensitive, and I'm not going to name the app that you can see here on the screen, but games in general, apps that provide that gamification aspect, they keep you hooked. But they don't help you speak. They don't help you connect the dots, okay? Because as I mentioned before, your English speaking will depend on your vocabulary and grammar. Sorry, okay? And these games, what happens to these games? They give you dopamine. And dopamine excites your brain. It's reward, and your brain loves rewards. Your brain loves the excitement. So what happens? Your brain wants more. So you always go back to the game because it makes you feel good. So when you get a ting, correct, good job, you won, go to the next level, keep going, now you know 1,000 words. Wow, you are a master of English. Congratulations. Wow, only native speakers know these words. Now you do too. You're amazing. Keep playing. Winning in the game doesn't make you win in real life conversations. And these games, these apps, they're not necessarily always games, okay? These apps are designed by professionals who want to make you keep coming back, keep playing, keep going, keep saving, keep sharing. And that is not what studying looks like. I'm not saying that studying can't be fun. It can. But when you rely a lot on apps that make you match sentences, translate to English, learn these cool expressions, that is empty practice. That is the junk food of the language world. I like that, okay? That's the junk food of the language world, okay? If you really wanna learn, you will have to change the way you study. You can use this for entertainment, but it's not going to take you very far, and it's actually going to create really bad habits here. And fluency starts here. You should watch out for that, okay? So one thing that I see a lot is it's fun. Games are fun. And sometimes you will find some really weird phrases in these games where you have to translate, and then you have to put the words in the correct order, and bazinga! Go to the next level. Congratulations. So as a game, it is fun. And you see your score, you see other participants. It's exciting. You learn some cool expressions. But to speak, all of the time you spent trying to improve your level in the game, the expressions you learned, nothing comes to mind. You get completely paralyzed because your brain slows down. It didn't practice creating sentences, connecting the words. As you see here, verbs, phrasal verbs, adjectives, adverbs, idioms, prepositions, connectors, conjunctions. Your brain didn't have the proper practice to connect the information. And now you're completely lost. You need to speak, you have to communicate, but you don't know how. And what happens to you? You get that sense of paralysis. I don't know how to do this. My mind is running around. I feel like there's a version of me running around like crazy, trying to translate the phrases and put the phrases like in the game. But life is not a game. When you have to speak English, the real English, you need to change the way you study. And these 3 practices will block your English speaking if you don't change the way you study. If you found value in this lesson, all I ask from you is to share and perhaps subscribe, because I'm always posting different lessons here on my channel. But other than that, I'll see you in the next one.